what are your thoughts with regards to guiding growth to ensure that it is equitable for the people that live in the community as well as people coming from the outside? And we will start from, actually we'll start with Mr. Brown at the end if he's.
Well, Savannah, like the nation, has a long history of growth and development that has beneficiaries and victims. And I think this is a chance to even the score so that at least development will be, of course there's different rates of returns on different activities, but I was pleased to hear the moderator say that there's no direct harm from this. The question is, will there be real benefits to all? And I was pleased by our conversation as we were together all day. Hopefully out of tonight, there'll be concrete ways to say how are the protections in place, how are the harms avoided, and then how do people actually get these benefits. And we talked about zoning and probably what's imminent right now in development. So we talked about a whole lot of these things. I don't think there's a magic answer. I think certainly I feel pleased that I was part of this, but clearly in hindsight, you're doing the kind of the best you can at the time. This is $100 million, $200, $300 million. So now how do we take those things and make sure that the benefits accrue to housing improvement, housing infill, grocery stores, jobs. And I'm certainly concerned. I think one thing I would introduce, I'm talking already too much, but is the idea that the city is debating the benefits of tourism. I think that's a good debate. How do we take that, the net benefits of that, and infuse that into our neighborhoods? How do our neighborhoods benefit from that?
Okay, if you can, as we move down, that's fine. I'm going to ask if we can limit the response if we can to a minute or so, because. But if you can at least state your name so the audience knows who you are. Does everybody have the Facebook or the face sheet that at least has the panelists' names on it and what their area of expertise is? If you don't, there are several outside that you can pick up on your way out if you want to know who's here. David, I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts are since you do this work.
My name is David Green, and I'm going to speak very briefly more about this later, but I think that at the most basic level, there's a whole bunch of complicated stuff going on, and what's really important is accountability. And I think that there needs to be a structure put in place that allows everyone to understand exactly what the goals of this project are, and not just the high-level goals, but goals with a clear level of specificity and the way that it affects the residents, and in a way that every decision that gets made and every project that moves forward can be clearly identified, and everybody understands exactly what it is that the return is for the neighborhood. I'm sure you'll have questions about this, and we'll talk about it more, but accountability is absolutely the thing that needs to happen to make sure that this job is done correctly and to the benefit of everybody sitting in this room.
I'm Dwayne Stevens. To piggyback on what David is saying, accountability is definitely essential. And the other piece to it is, I think, in analyzing and making all these assessments, making sure we determine exactly what the community needs, and in recognizing what the community needs, make sure we put the policies and procedures in place, set up the infrastructure that's going to allow for these communities to have access to the educational, the economic resources in order for them to be self-sustaining.
Okay.
Cool. Sylvester Gould. I'm a lawyer by training, but I've done development in 4 states and own an engineering firm here in Savannah for the last 5 years with a team of other MBE firms. I'm always interested in transparency and how the community views the project. What are the short and the long-term benefits for the community? What about a flexible master plan that the community is involved in? What is the financial impact for the community? how many jobs and businesses are created in and for the community. I think that that's things that are important in this development. Perkins and Will, great firm that looking at this. It's got to be flexible, and we have to have the involvement of this community because this is your community. And this is a project that's going to go on for the next 40 years. And some of us won't even be here when it's finished. Thank you.
Malcolm?
Thank you. I'm just down from Charlotte. But the interesting thing is that I'm also bringing a perspective that's at least nationwide. Gabrielle and I do some work together nationally. But I think that having spent some time, because of my proximity to Charlotte, coming in and out of Savannah and looking at projects, I think that it's important for this community, which has sort of had this sort of divide and separation given 16's construction, but also even the canal was back. And if you date that back even further to Jeff's initial comments to the sort of origins of what's really in the ground in this community, its history with these plantations and the people that lived there were healthy. But there is just a great and rich history and story to be told about what has happened since then, sort of these reiterations of community. And then somehow, even though we are now sort of talking about inviting and sort of colluding sort of the rest of Savannah with this portion of the city, there's a lot of story there to be told, a lot of emphasis of culture that can be shared, and that somehow needs to be woven in with all the talk about the resetting of the community, the jobs, and sort of this reimagining of what's happening, particularly as people are aging out. We want there to be some encouragement for people to come in and be interested in what's happening here.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle Bullock. So I have a couple of comments around that. First of all, the devil's in the details. And there's a lot of framework that Jeff presented that is all good, but it's only as good as its execution. And that goes to the policy that has to go along with it to protect the people and create the place. I do worry about this thing becoming so precious, that it's not penetrable, that it's not welcoming, that it's just so precious. So I would recommend that the neighborhood district boundary overlay that Jeff, you described, that become part of the master plan, that it not just be an overlay, but it be part of how this thing develops, because that will be its death or its rebirth or life that is infused into it if it's done that, in my opinion. The other last thing, and this is a criticism, Jeff, when we show images of what it could be, let's be more inclusive and diverse in the people that we show. It's on job, is it?
All right.
So I'm Paula Chrysler, and what we know is what we saw here, a lot of lines around the streets and things like that. We know that policies from a long time ago created and paved those massive roads through, made things divisive. Well, what we also know, there's plenty of research that says that the help on one side of that road is good and the help on the other side of that road is not. And so in my role at Healthy Savannah, we've been fortunate to receive a 5-year big grant from the CDC called REACH, Racial and Ethnic Approaches to Community Health. I've been able to bring on Healthy Savannah some great team members to help do a lot of outreach. You've heard Jeff talk about Tied to Town, and so there are 3 strategy areas in the REACH grant. And nutrition, physical activity, and community clinical linkages. And we intend, we've just finished year 1 doing assessments, but you will see the REACH team out in the community helping to reduce those health disparities that we know happen. Again, they're there, we know it, and we're here to do something about it.
Okay, I would just like to say one thing, and that is that I do feel that it's going to be really important to ensure that there is some funding source to ensure that the people that have looked in the neighborhood and in the area have access to that so that they can at least improve their living conditions, their homes, and additionally use those resources to get jobs that are located in the area. I think that it would be kind of a shame if we had this beautiful new facility and the people that live in the neighborhood didn't have at least the resources to start fixing their homes up and doing what is needed to have everybody be uplifted at the same time. One of the other questions, or a couple other questions, as you saw on the presentation, one of the biggest issues that I know I've heard since I've been here has been around stormwater management, and design innovation. There are multiple ways to address this, and I will let a couple of designers on the panel at least talk about what their thoughts may be with regards to having more innovative design to address stormwater and have that be part of the overall arena project to make sure that the community is also protected.
Feel it, you make a park out of it, you can actually get a whole lot more for the community. I think that what they're doing is good. It's probably not good enough yet, but I think that it's the right approach to take dollars that you've got to spend on infrastructure and make great parks and great places. I think if you don't do that, it's just idiotic. So I think it's at least a baseline effort.
Okay. Anybody else want to say on that?
Well, I was just going to quickly offer up that I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and I find that many of our historic cities have made a pretty big deal out of infrastructure in general. Savannah does a fantastic job of emphasizing some of that, its train history and so forth. But there's something to be said, I guess, about the public not only experiencing sort of the effects of environmental conditions, but also there's something also to be exemplifying, controlling that or tempering that, and how those mechanisms work. It gets sort of everybody behind the solution. You know, we understand the impacts, and certainly the carpet community understands the impact of this canal. But there's also a great story. It gets this community investment notion behind solutions. You're talking about having dialogue. Oh, look what we were able to do in the last 5 years. That's going to improve at least some of the conditions, and we're going to keep working at that. Why hide that as opposed to being able to allow people to see the experience?
Okay. So as we move forward, one of the other issues and concerns that I've heard from the community, and it would be good to get some thought, is what can we do to ensure accountability with regards to investments that are made. I know we just had a squash that was passed. I'm going to start on this end, and I won't put you in a position to do that. I will start with Gabrielle, and I'm going to go to get to David. So I'm going to do Gabrielle, and then I'm going to jump to David, because I know David has a lot of thoughts with regards to accountability, and I agree with them. I think that there has to be accountability on both parts. You have to do your part, and you have to do your part as well. So, Gabrielle, I'll let you start, and then we're going to tee off to David, and then Sylvester. If you've got some comments, that would be great.
Well, I think what I said before, the devil's in the details, is exactly how are we going to hold everybody accountable? What are the policies? And you can't do it when, when the master plan is done or the arena is done. It's got to be done in conjunction at the same time so that we know what needs to move and slide and change and adjust. So I know David has a lot to say.
So I'm not going to say a lot about this, but I will tell you, I'm old and curmudgeonly and impatient. And I think that when we make promises to communities, we need to keep those promises. And I think that in general doesn't happen. And Malcolm's right. We work a lot nationally, we work a lot globally, right? And there's a level of unfairness in the world that just can't keep moving forward. And so I think this is an interesting framework, but I think that without specific goals and targets that are clear and open to the community, there's no way of tracking how much better we're doing. And so we talk about public health. How much healthier do we want to make West Savannah? How do we track the increases in health benefits? How do we track the increases in beneficial food sources? How do we track the levels of connectivity? Just simple things like how many sidewalks are repaired and in place that people can walk in. These are very simple things. And so what you'll do is you'll get, and again, like I'm just telling you exactly what I think, right? People stand up here and say, well, this is great. Let's put some sidewalks in and we're going to make all these great streets. And Jeff's going to draw these beautiful drawings and they're going to be beautiful. And you look at these things and it's great. And you're sitting around 10 years from now and you're wondering what happened, just like with the park that had a plan in 1982 and it's still a concrete path with a fence around it, right? It makes absolutely no sense. And so when we're talking about transparency and accountability, we need to do exactly what you were saying, which is understand where we are right now, understand where we want to be, and then track on a yearly basis or a 6-month basis exactly where resources are going, exactly what the community is getting that they were promised. Those things may change. You may find out in a year that what Jeff and his team said should happen in a year might not have been exactly the right thing. The basin might need to get a little bit bigger. You might need to not put Cohen Street in right away. Whatever those issues are, you're directly involved in the process and you have access to all that information. It's absolutely possible to do. It's something that I think the community needs to demand, excuse me for the people from the city, needs to demand from the city and the team putting this stuff together so you know a year from now what's happened and what's projected for the next 2 years. 2 years from now, what's happened, what's projected for the next year. Otherwise, it's just too opaque. There's no way to continue building trust, and there's no way that you as a community will know what you've gotten from this process and how much benefit you've gotten from this process.
I just have to say
That's fine, Michael, go ahead.
Savannah that we're sitting in today was built on that. Beginning in the 1970s, we did neighborhood measures on everything, crime and housing and so forth. If we're not doing that, then we've lost our way. That's what we did. The number of dirt streets in West Savannah and Liberty City, and every year, those had to be tracked. The amount of drainage problems, the homicides. We did that for 50 years. Now, let's get back to it, and why not do it here? I hope we haven't lost that capacity, because that is what drove us to make these neighborhoods better, to eliminate the terrible, terrible disparities that were here really from the beginning. So, let's take the 20 actions up here, put them in a booklet, and good thing nowadays is they can be posted online, and we can see these 12 months.
So I'm going to interrupt you for a second. I'm not even talking about posting online. Like I'm talking about it needs to be something that's actually operating in a way that's evaluating.
No, I'll interrupt you. That's what we did.
Yeah. But now we have things like, I'm sorry, but now we have things like Google, right? We can do all these things and we should demand that this happens in this process. I'm sorry, but I just feel like it's crazy not to do this.
Let me cut in.
Okay,
You know how to use the computer.
And
We have to teach everyone.
that's hold on. Let's get back. This is good information, and it's important, and I do think that I am not disagreeing, and I think that people in the room would probably agree that we probably do need to get back to collecting data and using that as we move forward to make decisions, but we also need to be producing something that lets the community know that we are engaged in hearing what their concerns are. Mr. Gould, you, with regards to addressing those issues.
You folks have made a great commitment. You just passed 44 million yesterday in Splash, and we're going to have to come back to you as we progress in doing these developments. And so you elected your city alderman yesterday. You got a runoff for your mayor's race. You have the right to demand accountability from your elected officials. You have a county commission here. You have the right to hold everyone accountable. There's an owner's rep chosen for this project. You've got Perkins and Will as your lead architect. You have numerous engineering firms involved in this, and you've got AECOM, one of the foremost construction companies in the world. you have the right to demand accountability. You have the right to be involved in the process from day one. If there's anyone who doesn't and who has a question, and that question cannot be answered, we're not doing our jobs, and you're not holding us accountable.
So, with that, okay, Dwayne?
I just want to touch on, we talk accountability and transparency. In this area, this community, in particular, there's been a great level of distrust that's been established. So with the distrust, the transparency and accountability is essential in regaining that trust. And if we're going to be transparent, as the gentleman mentioned, and as I mentioned earlier discussion, there's a definite need for understanding what that community looks like and understanding how you convey the information. It's an older population in some of those communities, therefore you need to make sure that the medium in which you relay your information is going to be fitted. We have to know our audience in order to be effectively communicating, and that then the expectation is set and it's understood as to, on both parties, what accountability looks like and how do you get there.
Okay. And I think that it's also important as we look at some of the recommendations from the action plan to actually look and see what we already have in place. I think that there are a lot of programs that we have that at one time the city was doing, and they either went away or they still have the ability to do them, but they became a lower priority. So one of the things as we move forward that we'll have to do is an assessment of what resources we currently have for this project. The next question, and this is really important with regards to dealing with design and ensuring that as we create those transition areas, that we are looking at mobility, both walking, biking, and cars. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that.
So again, we always want the healthy choice to be the easy choice, and so some of those designs you see are kind of visitor focused. Well, from where we come from, we are very community focused, and so we want that the access, the healthy choice to be the easy choice for the community. And so when we're going to be doing outreach, we're going to be listening and then providing, taking information to the designers and saying this is what the community wants, or maybe the designers will be in the room with us. We don't have it all the details worked out, but rest assured, from my perspective, the community's voice is the most important as we figure out what works for the community in terms of that mobility, access to healthy food, access to services, whether they're community-based organizations or medical services. We want that access to be easier at the end of the day. So the connectivity, we focus on the community, and the visitors then will have it as just, it'll be an extra bonus.
Malcolm, I'd like to hear what your perspective is with regards to what the civic piece with regards to guiding or putting opportunities or safe spaces as people go from the arena back into the neighborhoods that are adjacent to them.
Sure. And I think there's probably an expanded answer to that to talk about sort of public realm and civic space. I was at home just a couple of days ago, and just a small, those kinds of things that you notice as a citizen. I was out at a public park, large public park at the office. I look over, and there's an entire group of senior adults, many in wheelchairs, many with walkers, but they had come to the park and found ease to get into the park from whatever vehicle they were using or whatever means they had for actually getting to the park. But they couldn't park adjacent to it, they had to park across the street from it. All those folks had not been sort of carried there, put on a cart, they used the mobile means that they had, wheelchairs and other things, to get to this place of respite within the park to have their time there. And I'm mentioning this is because I want park and these areas to be accessed by all of the adults on both sides of the expressways. We talked and looked at a lot of examples of how that might happen sort of from the eastern side. But we want to look at more connective opportunities to coming from the neighborhoods. There's health that's involved with that. The more people that we can sort of get into civic space, and the easier it is for that to happen. We're getting out of the cars, we're spending less time in those cars, but we're able to get larger groups in to sort of be a part of a very active program. The other piece to this, though, is that there's a multi-generational aspect to most of these successful projects, in that we encourage groups from all across both demographic capacities, but also across ages, so that there are connections between all of those people. And there's a great health benefit that I know that you've been kind of part of your research to our elder members of our community, being able to make connections through programming and outdoor space to the younger members of our population, so that there's sort of this meeting in the middle. There's an encouragement for those folks to get out. Their health is improved by being able to connect with those younger people. And then those younger people learn an awful lot. They become better sort of civic citizens. There's great value in those interactions. So that to me is a larger sort of picture take of civic space and health interaction, but it's a good one to follow. And I think that this process and the park and everything else has the underpinnings of that. It's up to the community to encourage that. There's accountability in what we draw and look at, but it at least has the underpinnings and stuff.
Okay. I was getting ready to get to you. Yes, please do.
What, something you said that triggered a thought I had earlier today. I thought about this project, the arena, as a commercial project, until I saw the plans, and it truly is meant to be civic. And so I would encourage us to remember that, because the types of buildings and programs that go into a commercial space versus a civic space are very different, and the outcomes are very different. And if we want this to be for everybody, then it ought to be more civic and less commercial.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Just one last question, and then we will open it up to Q&A. If anybody's got questions that they'd like to answer, you can start lining up so that we can try to get as many people's questions asked as possible. That would be great. And if they could be great questions, that would be great. Just very quickly for the group as people are lining up. What do you see, and I would say in a sentence, if possible, are the great are challenges with regards to moving this project forward with City?
Protection of the neighborhoods downstream from the
Preventing the haves and the have-nots.
Total engagement from everyone.
Okay. So did everybody hear that? Okay, great. We're now ready to take questions, not unless somebody's got this burning statement that they'd like to make from our esteemed panel. We will go ahead and do questions. If you can state your name, if you don't mind, so that we've got it for the record, and then ask your question, I'd appreciate that.
Off of Stowers Avenue, off of Stowers Way. If you look at what y'all saying about the neighborhood and storms, y'all wants to make that canal wider, deeper. You got pipes going across, and on the other side, that's where the sewage running to the pipes there. Well, what I'm saying, too, what you're going to do back to people who stay there. If you're going to deepen it, you're going to have to run the pipes on it, or direct pipes elsewhere. That needs to be started before you even think about deepening. Because all those pipes will have to be removed.
Okay.
If not, we're going to have extra drink. And another thing too, is a double whammy for the same area. On one end of the Springfield Terrace, you got to worry about the storm sewage. On the other area, there's no way you're going to have a large amount of traffic without people losing their home. and on the street that stay on, a person stay on the end, they might very well lose their home, get fair market value for it. Y'all need to think about everybody who's back up against the canal.
Okay, okay. Well, thank you. We've got that recorded. Is there just a simple response to that? There were multiple statements, but I'm not sure if there was a question. I will say that referred to, it's one of the, it's some of the,
But it is a question for the engineer.
Okay.
Because before, it is a question for the engineer, that
Okay.
problem needs to be.
I'm bringing up the folks that have done the engineering, so hopefully we'll get a response. Yeah.
I'll jump in on the October, that there's different pieces of infrastructure that are running through this area, and you're absolutely correct. That there's sanitary sewers, and the pipes that are going across the canal are those sanitary sewers, and they need to be rebuilt. And I think that's the simple answer. You're correct.
And hey,
And if you want to have, if we could just one last, because we've got multiple people. Okay, thank you.
what I was saying is too, they also doing that, they talking about expanding. But what I was stating, that is relating her property in the other direction.
And there's everything that I see in the project right now, there's no reason for anyone to lose their home as a part of this project.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Hi, my name is Chelsea, and we're talking about transparency, and yet no one's talked about parking. So I can assume that the majority of people here drove tonight, and this master plan, which we've been waiting for, still is not addressing parking. So I'm very curious as to when we'll be doing that, if we will at all, and yeah.
Well, I will let Perkins and Will answer that. I did know that we did have a slide up where they talked about the percentages and ways of getting people to and from the arena, but not the parking. You're correct.
So when we talked about that's parking. So the 50% of visitors, if so right now there's planned to be a 500 space parking deck that's on the north side of the arena, and so that's sort of in the making. So that's a third of that half. Like if you're keeping track of the numbers, there are another 1,000 spaces or so that need to be found in this district, and as of this moment, that there isn't a location for those.
And that's reported, you just said that you all did not have an allocated space for parking as of right.
At this moment, there's no definitive surface parking anywhere in the district. What we're recommending is that that any parking that's provided on day one of the arena is done in a temporary way, so built in a temporary way and has a sunset. That what we're recommending is other modes be prioritized as a part of this. So shuttles, bicycle and walking, and the emergence of rideshare. And it needs to be studied through the operation of the district before this community goes and spends potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in parking. That's what we're recommending at this moment.
And I will say that if you would like to have further conversation about that tomorrow at 10 o'clock, there will be additional conversation. That is an issue that has been raised throughout, at least that I've heard. So it's not something that I know that's forgotten. It's something that they haven't totally worked out yet.
We've been waiting for.
I understand. He hears you, for sure. Yes, sir.
So I'm sorry, but just not to let Jeff off the hook, right? So this is exactly, your comment has identified what's permanent parking, what's transitional parking, what the sunset is, and if it's going to go away in 2 years because certain other things have to happen, that needs to happen. You're 100% right that it's not done. I'm not working on the project, so I can say you guys need to figure it out.
Yes.
But I think that your question, the way you're asking that question, is fundamental, not just to parking, but to the first question, to everything we're talking about, because it's the only way you can guarantee that you're not going to get the wrong stuff in the wrong place and it's going to be there forever, and there's too much of it or too little of it.
But let me say this about parking. There's two sides to that coin. The whole time that I was city manager here, we got to have a whole lot more parking. Well, Yeah, you need a place that people can come here, but the parking itself is not a panacea. So I think it probably would have been better if the whole equation was in place, but nevertheless, I heard people, let's build this thing out in Cooler, and we'll have 10,000 parking spaces. I don't think we wanted to go there. I think what we need is a balanced way, as they showed on the slide, for people to get here and to leave. There's not very much parking for our present building, but it seems to work. It's worked for the last 4 years. So let's all work together and figure out a way that people can come here and don't just drive down in their car and drive away, but perhaps go to dinner or go to some other event, or have a series of places for people to take ride shares. So it's not just let's go identify 5,000 spaces, and if we don't have them, we're in trouble. I don't think that's true.
I guess I was just expecting that by now. Like I was expecting
Oh,
to
yeah.
have that by now.
I understand, and they've got some more time. The plan, and I don't know if Jeff indicated this, but the plan is not finished. It's still in draft mode, so that's where we are. And as I said, I think that one of the things I know that I heard very loudly, and I think is important, is that there really does need to be a very clear timeline with regards to when things are going to happen. That's reviewed and reported out to the people in the community. So, but just remember, their plan is not finished. That's one of the big things that has to be addressed. And you're right to have that as a concern. Well, I'm hoping that you will have it on the next timeline. As I said, they've heard the question, they know it's an issue. There'll be further conversation about it. I don't have any other answer for you for that. I think they can only respond. But regardless of that, I want to get to the next gentleman who's been
I'm
waiting.
just going to say yes, but the next plan you see is going to have parking.
It should
You know
have.
why? Because these people work for me. I've never seen this plan before today. But I am telling you, no, seriously, I'm telling you that there's going to be parking on this plan because it needs to be there, right? But it's just the process we're going through. But again, the question you're asking is exactly correct. It needs to be transparent. It's just the process. But the next revision will absolutely have to have parking there.
When you get the final plan, because this is not, as I said, it should have all of the things that are needed.
Yeah,
So I think that's kind of a given that they're going to address the concerns that are needed to implement.
You can hold me to it personally.
Okay, assume that they will. They should, because I think that that's an important component in regards to making all of this work. There will be a strategy. Yes, sir. I want to make sure we get everybody that's been patiently waiting.
Yes, please. My name is Larry King, and I think we kind of outdated, but the last meeting I was to, it said the Canal District project was not funded yet. It hasn't been funded, and I asked this because everything that you state of as far as the safeguard for the community and everything is based upon the Canal project, not the building of the civic center, which I understood is funded and we're going forward with. So, I'm just asking what's going on.
Again, I'm going to defer. One of the things I just want to remind people of is that this panel, one of the reasons that they were convened is because you've got several that are experts that are not from here. You've got a group that had a fresh look at what they have planned to date. The plan is not finished, and they're not going to be able to answer the financing questions because I don't think anybody up here, including myself, really has the answer to that with regards to funding because I'm not involved in that component of the project. So I think Jeff can give you a soft answer, but I'm not sure if he can answer it.
There are portions of this that are funded, and there are portions of this that are not. Everything that we're showing on that drawing and everything that we think should occur, not all of that is funded presently. And so some of these things, and you'll see it, you have to go out into the lobby and look at this board, and if you run down these actions, some of those are funding actions. We think there are new funding mechanisms that have to be put in place. They're not in place right now. There are portions of funding this infrastructure, of getting the stormwater through here. There are portions of it that will be funded by the SPLOST that y'all voted on last night. And there are portions that aren't. There are portions that will take decades to complete. And that funding isn't in place yet. This isn't punting, this isn't equivocating, it's just a fact. And that's why this action list, we think, is so important. We're not here, trying to obscure something. We know that there's parts of this that aren't funded. And that's why we're saying, this is what we're putting forward. We're saying you need new funding mechanisms, and they're out there. And so this is part of the dialogue that we're having. And I'm on the page with you.
Jeff?
Okay.
Can I ask a question related to that?
Yes.
Just in terms of communicating updates and information to this community, is there a website or social media distribution of the material?
There is, and right now we're working through the city's website and the standard communication channels that they have. And so, I would defer to that. We might be going down a path of there needing to be new mechanisms and new ways of communicating. I don't know.
To that point, I think, again, I'll reiterate, we have to make sure that we understand our audience and the means in which we need to communicate the information or disseminate the information. But with that being said, I'll go on record to say I highly encourage this body to look into being present or at least distributing documents that can be at community meetings. So I would, in turn, encourage you as a community to go to these community meetings so you can have a place where you can actually pick up this information so it can be disseminated for those where there is a technological gap.
Yes, sir.
Steve, I'm wondering how the water in the canal is going to be managed after the wind project is complete. What I'm talking about is that right now there's a pair of tidal locks on the canal, towards Savannah River, and they're closed on several times. And the stormwater department pumps the water south of that area to the area past the tidal locks. So it's kind of kept artificially low south of the tidal locks. So after the project's completed, are you planning on keeping the tidal locks closed and continuing pumping, or are you going to open tidal locks?
There are some technical pieces of that I'm not qualified to answer. There's one part of that I can answer, and that is that the arena is not the development of the arena now. The development of everything in this master plan will really change the movement of water through this district, and it must be studied. It must be well designed, and it must be no way around that. For the arena itself, it will not contribute any more stormwater to the picture. The water's already coming down. There's a large cistern that's being designed under the entry plaza to the arena to hold that stormwater, and it's being designed to not create any additional impacts. And so that's the arena itself. But absolutely, this district, it's going to change the movement of water, and I don't know how to answer the
I think I can answer it. Savannah now has 7 or 8 pump stations. The tide will not come back upstream. That's not in the cards in Savannah.
You're going to keep the tidal locks closed then?
Well, they're not just closed. The water that comes through the canal every day is discharged through the pump station. Now, I think this does give an opportunity, and it was pointed out in the slides, to create impoundments, and those are a good thing. If you go to San Antonio, that's an impoundment. So the Canal District creates that opportunity. It creates opportunity to make it, the banks of it, pleasant and park-like and even environmentally valuable. But Savannah, the drainage system in Savannah, given our elevation, is through pump stations. And they're going to be there, and probably with global warming, they're going to be more important. If we didn't have pump stations in Savannah, you would regularly have high tide water well up into our neighborhoods, all through this whole basin. So I think that they've done a very good job of taking where we are and then saying, how do we just do more than just discharge this in an efficient, sort of ugly way, to making it into something that would be an asset and attractive.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Madam Chairman, thank you, Al. This is incredible, and it's great to be able to speak for the targets before the horse. look at the Plant Riverside or Eastern Wharf, an overall authority to be formed, like, say, New Jersey, New York did at the harbor, is going to be essential, and then everything else can trickle down. We do a lot of grinding, and we'll say that the water, as Ulysses started the conversation, and every other question. So we have 30, 40, 50. So if you look at those climate change projections, we know that we're going to have to manage this water. West Savannah is the most vulnerable. If you look at those projections, it's where it fills up first. But if you look at the Port Authority, there are several strategic partners. 2 days ago, Apple announced they were going to put $2 billion into affordable housing. The last thing we all would like to see in the community is that this anomaly gets built in a bubble, and you don't look down to Augusta Avenue or down to where the weeping time was. I didn't hear that brought up. There's so much history. One of the things that Michael has fought many battles, and we all know history is our foundation, but it has to be equal. And so if we recognize the history that has contributed to the port, to the growth of the city, the underpinnings of the city, this has to be looked at holistically, almost like the Beltline in Atlanta. You have to connect it. You have to connect it so that the dreadful G word doesn't appear, because it will. And if we don't, if the authority doesn't manage this, and the last thing I'd like to say is, this is in a federal opportunity zone. We have an enormous opportunity here to bring in this whole project holistically in an opportunity zone. You'll be able to bring in major partners to come in and then do this correctly. You have to consider the entire area. Please think farther than this area. I saw an overlay.
And I will say that one of the great things, I wish that we had that map up, that I know that I've been pushing it for them to look at the whole neighborhood as part of this project, because you're right, there are the transition areas that will be impacted. I know that is something that, that map's not up there, but that is something that will be looked at.
Does it go to Augusta Avenue? Does it go
I don't think that has
Main
it straight
Street?
down to what I've seen.
If you want to address all of
I
that,
think it needs to go where it needs to
It
go.
needs to go where it needs to go.
this will be like Tribeca, or Buckhead, or
Absolutely.
Williamsburg. It'll end up being, and as I said, when we fail, the market will take over.
Absolutely.
It won't be affordable or sustainable.
Absolutely, but we have definitely talked about that. Right on point.
Hi, my name is Michelle Gonzalez. Jeff mentioned hidden history, and he stole my thunder the last gentleman. But to me, here in Savannah, when you look at the monuments, there is a lopsided representation of history. And speaking of the weeping time, the arena is going to be built just a couple miles away from where that happened. I know we have a plaque now, but it's very small. And you think about some of the large monuments that we have for just one man in different parts here. So I would like to see the arena have some sort of a monument for the weeping time. And I don't know who to talk to, but I have some ideas about how it would look.
Excellent. There's, again, make sure we've got your name and contact number, and we also have some cards out so that we can contact you. Thank you.
It's a fantastic idea, and this is a great place to start talking about
Absolutely.
that. I mean, I would love also, if anyone on the panel has thoughts about, the way that might be brought forward in the design of the district.
I think it's a deeper conversation, obviously, and it's history that deserves that. But I made some comments earlier about sort of these overlays and sort of not coming into a project like this one with sort of such hallowed ground, all the things that happen on this section of town, and not give it sort of its fair look.
Especially if it's going to be a civic arena.
Absolutely, but I think in some ways, yes, it's a civic arena, but you've got a very important historic community that happened in the 40s and 50s and 60s. But there was also this history that those houses were even built on. And so I guess what I'm encouraging is a much broader conversation to sort of recognize and overlay the park areas with a lot of this history to sort of educate the community, but also to look forward in a way that sort of encourages the interest again in this part of town. It tells those stories, it makes it accessible and palatable to the rest of the community so that they learn more about it. And that there are great things that can begin to happen sort of around that history. It's not just about sort of the sadness of that tragedy, but it's also about sort of these new things in addition to the resilience that came from that torrid year.
So how do people in the community express ideas like this?
Well, as I said, one of the things, just so that you know, I do know that the city's, like they're gonna have a meeting next week to talk about public art and, have that be part of the discussion, not only in this area, but just citywide. And I do think that that's a great idea. It's one of the areas that I'm hoping that is moving forward with this project that is covered in the recommendations, because that is something that needs to be incorporated. And more thought needs to be given into what is, what that should be, and the community needs to be involved in that process. It's not something that, you know, I think anybody can do without having a public process.
And I think the community absolutely has to be involved in that process because of the simple fact that history, just quite frankly, is not captured or documented as it is in other communities. I introduced an idea of cultural preservation amongst, when we were at some of these other meetings in regards to the Canal District. I'm from Clovis. My grandmother's house is still right a block and a half away from the arena. I have a vested interest to make sure that the history that was established in that community is also preserved and told as a part of the city at large, because that community contributes to what the city of Savannah is. So for that to be lost would be a tragedy. And so the community has to be readily available to provide that information, and we have to do, and the individuals that's working on this project have to do their due diligence to make sure that they're going to the proper places to get accurate accounts of what that history is in order to celebrate and communicate.
Okay, so thank
So
you.
someone will email me?
Actually, if you come around to this side, we'll get your information and someone will contact you. Yes, sir. I want to make sure everybody gets an opportunity to ask.
Hey there, my name is Jason Combs, and I'm a former grad student of Dave Green. So this is directed at you first. It's kind of a philosophical question. I'm not sure if you could hear some of the audio they gathered when we were playing before we started. They had an interview with a woman from the community who said that she hoped that this project would create wealth in a low wealth area. But understandably, she hoped that could happen without displacement and without gentrification. Do you think that's wishful thinking? Do you think it's realistic? And how might it be made realistic?
I think it's so far beyond wishful thinking. I think it's an absolute necessity. And I think it's done through policy. And this is exactly why I'm saying I think we need to put in place targets for maintaining property tax caps in the area and track and evaluate that to make sure we're not having any displacement. The easiest way to keep displacement from happening is publicize when it starts to happen. And I think that in the program that they've got set up, there's already 3 or 4 funding programs and policies that can make that happen. But it has to happen. You can't do what you want to do and have displacement. You can't do anything that we're talking about if you have displacement.
Would you distinguish voluntary versus involuntary displacement? Let's say a grandmother wants to sell her house because it's going to be worth it.
But what can't happen is that everybody has to move because they can't afford to live there. That is just unacceptable, right? And we have an opportunity in this project, you all have an opportunity in this project to ensure that the benefits that are coming from this incredible civic project benefit the adjacent neighborhood. Because the alternative is that it causes problems for the adjacent neighborhood, and that is just simply unacceptable. And this is not hard to do. It's just political will and ensuring that everybody understands what's happening on a year-on-year basis.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's why it's really important to have a plan, because we didn't have one, and that's the beginning of moving forward with this process. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Mary Ellen Sprague, and I have one comment on one question. I guess I heard kind of a disconnect in some of what Jeff was saying. On the one hand, I hear a lot about protecting Cloverdale and the other neighborhoods in this area, and I think that's very, very worthy. But on the other hand, when we started talking about the price tag and how there were going to be the other funding sources, he talked about using a tax, well, a tax allocation district is predicated on more development. It is funded, the city comes in and provides the infrastructure, and then the city gets that money back through increased property taxes. Well, that means basically that this area would have to be developed. That means that while you see all this beautiful green space and talk about civic, that when you go out there and you actually look, there's all these plaques that are set aside for development. So just, know what you're doing if you start talking about TAB, because it's predicated on development, and the community has to understand what's coming, and if they want that development or they don't. That is my comment. My question is, Jeff wants to speak. You want to speak?
No. Let her answer the question, because I want to make sure the others get to ask their question. So ask their question.
The question is really, this is clearly going to be an enormously expensive undertaking. It's going to take many, many, many years. You were talking about 50 years. I can definitely agree with that. My question is, why is there not, or when are we going to be the point when we have kind of the phases? What's going to come first? Where's the timeline? What can we expect after the civic center is built?
Now you can answer.
I think that long-term timeline is something that needs work. It just honestly, at this moment, it's hard to predict what happens exactly after 3 years or so. It's one of the reasons why we think that these actions need to be put in place, because there needs to be an authority, there needs to be accountability for all of this stuff, and some group of people to help bring that stuff forward in the future, in addition to your political representatives. So I don't know about that, the 5 to 45 year time frame. I feel confident about this in a 50-year time frame, and I also feel like it's ambitious, very ambitious, but I think all of this stuff can be achieved in 3 years. And so those two ends of the spectrum,
This is up on the street.
I think action can be taken on every single one of these things.
Oh, you talking about this?
Oh, yeah. Left side, right side.
If that was the case, I was getting ready to go and ask the question myself.
I think your first comment, your concerns are absolutely in the right place. And we agree wholeheartedly that a tax allocation district, there is risk there for existing homeowners. And it's why with that we're saying there has to be a program put in place to absolutely ensure any present resident of these communities, these neighborhoods, that they're protected against any rising tax value over the duration of this project. And so I don't, at this moment, I don't know how to, I think you can't separate those two things. They have to go together. And a TAB without those protections is going to do you a disservice. So that's where we are right now in this, and so I feel like I agree.
And I think that there needs to be an educational program for the community and just the citizens as a whole on all the economic development tools, so that people understand what the impacts are for whatever is chosen, because there's going to be a suite of tools that can be used with redevelopment of this area, from opportunity zones to enterprise zone. Everything you can dream of is covered within this boundary, and I do think that it's really important for people to really understand how all of this works, and that's one of the challenges I think that this project has, and it's one of the things I think that they can step up to, but it is something that's needed. Yes, sir. Next, we've got 3 more people, and then we will discuss.
My name is Adam Cohen. I guess looking at the PowerPoint up there and seeing the timeline, hearing something about, well, there's funding available for some and funding not available for others. That put in the mind of either enterprise or project about to start. At a certain point, it was being suspended animation due to the funding, and and yet I've heard nothing said about a recession, because I hear somewhere further up the road there will be the recession. Another term that's not been used, cost overruns. I'm sure you're gonna come across that at some point in time. So, how can the average person, citizen like myself, kind of feel like I can enjoy this ride and not feel like I'm sitting on it with razor blades in the seat when I get off at the moment? Thank you.
Can I say this? I think Isaac is, he and I have seen each other for 25 years. I think it's time for the city to just make a commitment in the next 2 months to say, what have we done so far? I mean, I think about Bay Street and Fellwood and, you know, the retention basin that's there and the property acquisitions and the money for widening Burnett. You know, and go all the way through this area and just say, look, this is where we are. And then I think, what's going to happen in the next 5 years, we think. And these people bring a lot of knowledge. And then what's going to happen beyond that 5-year window. So we all have a more accurate picture, as you're saying. I think you're raising an excellent point. And let's just do it. It could go out in all different forms. Our neighborhood meetings are often very informative because you don't have to go online. There they are. Just have a briefing right in those neighborhood forums. What's happened? I mean, we know this, that this part of Savannah was absolutely ignored. You know, wonderful neighborhoods, dirt streets, no centers, no playgrounds. We know the whole history. Drainage was terrible. When I first went to Brickyard, on those streets, people had 2x4s painted white on their street. And I was naive there, and I said, well, what are the 2x4s for? They said, oh, those are channel markers. Those are channel markers so that when it floods, they'll know where the street is. That's the truth. So now what we need to say, Ivan, is, okay, these are all the things that we wanted to do. Where are we? And then the second is, what's going to happen in the next 5 years, and then thereafter. And that way we won't continue to be cynical and not or uninformed. We'll say, okay, here's how we're doing. Are we doing okay, or are we not doing okay?
And this is also an opportunity for the city to align it with their capital improvements budget so that you can see potential future funding to do some of the infrastructure implementation that's needed in moving this forward. So I do think that there's opportunity to take this and align it with other funding and financing mechanisms that the city has. Yes, ma'am. Next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for taking the time to be with us tonight. I'm Kayla Brown, and I'm Executive Director of Bike Walk Savannah. We've heard a lot tonight about the anticipated connections of bikeability and walkability, but I would like to hear maybe from the panel or from someone on the engineering team a little bit more about the specifics of those connections, how Tie to Town is related to the Springfield Canal path and kind of how that all connects, and then also what we're all doing, what the city's doing, or what this project's hoping to do with creating safe infrastructure that's connected, accessible, and safer for people of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities to be able to bike and walk to and around this area.
Just for time, if you start like interest in investors. And we have some maps too. I think that, honestly, I think that you need to see some of the maps which show some of the connectivity that the team has.
Caleb could have just called me tomorrow, right now. This is more for everybody. I know. So clearly there's, what I have seen on the same slides that you've seen is that there's a plan on, again, this is this several decade-long plan to ensure that there's connectivity on Gwinnett, on Cohen Street, into the arena, from the community. Again, we're going to, these are drawings, right? They're drafts of what we've got going on. But what I see is the commitment to absolutely make sure that happens, simply because I was invited to be here I think is just huge as part of this. These folks, they've got knowledge that I don't have, but being here and being committed to the absolute connectivity in the community is something that I feel that the team is committed to. And so specifics, they're going to come, and from my perspective, the specifics are going to come from the neighborhood meetings that we will be having around Tide to Town. That again, Perkins Will is showing Tide to Town going right along the Springfield Canal, like we've been talking about for a very long time. But again, we know that it's a drought. It's a concept that's out there that we have to look very specifically at. And understanding that we don't want it to be on the side that might be the water retention pond as time goes on. But so I think it's committed.
So he's finding constructive and complimentary ways.
My name is Meredith Stone. I'm a native of Savannah, born and raised here, and also a designer and planner in the city. I wanted to expand and perhaps add some comments and maybe some questions about the design process and the development process as it's going forward. I really am grateful to hear all of the comments that were said tonight. But I think that one thing that we have to remember is that, if anything, a lesson that we can learn from Savannah is that part of what makes Savannah beautiful is that it has a mixture of places, all within the same dense population, that are able to make it into a city. So that does not just include one purpose. It includes civic, it includes mixed use, affordable housing, not affordable housing, it includes commercial spaces. And I see on the map that we have future lot developments placed out, but there are things that encourage that, like zoning, that are going to be essential to make those things actually real. And while I see that we have a 3-year action plan that, as we learned tonight, is not concisely organized or laid out in how that's going to happen, there are some things that can happen now, like deciding on the zoning of the land, so that potential things like parking may be able to be addressed, so that we can start engaging in public-private partnerships in the city to attack the parking and attack the development and have that all cohesively happen. So I think that those things are important. And I mean, in addition to Chelsea's comment about parking, I saw some beautiful illustrations tonight. We talked about adding additional streets, but what I did not see that I'm aware of is that those streets also include street parking. I think that that is something that can be incorporated now in the planning and the illustration. I would love to see that implemented in your next plan.
Okay. It's no doubt we expressed the same concerns over when we talked about it, so you're right on point. Thank you so much. Mr. Williams, really.
Gotcha. Hi, I'm Robert Williams, I chair Architectural District SCAD, and I want to thank panelists for raising the issue of the area's history and the importance of recognizing that history, not only the residents and cultural preservation that Stephen mentioned, but also I think there's some missed opportunities here. We heard reference to the weekly time, which absolutely should be included. But one of the narratives as a historian of the city that, as I've been trying to say and tell, but there's so few opportunities to tell it, is the role that African Americans play in building the city. And here we have a nexus of infrastructure built by African American slaves. That canal was dug by slaves. Those rice fields were manned by Africans who knew how to man those fields. And the Brickyards neighborhood, although not where all the bricks were made, like a Hermitage plantation by the slave Africans, but the Brickyard is a legacy of a brick-making tradition by African Americans that built the city. And so you've got an African American contribution to the city at a civic space that I think hasn't been recognized adequately here. And I think there are ways that this plan could celebrate their role in building the city. So that's one aspect. And the other is a more modern narrative that's utterly missing from this plan, and that is you've got the waterworks building, but not the pump house right with it, that should be protected. It's a little building that's not on your plans. And then just north of the waterworks is the Carter Lab. And it's interesting that Paula Price's rent is from the CDC, because one of the founding labs that led to the CDC being in Atlanta is right on this site. Carter Lab, the WVA building, was built to be a health lab during World War II, did instrumental research for the U.S. Army for malaria research. It, along with the Oakland Islands, were 2 to 3 labs that led to the CDC. And there is no plan officially to protect that. So I would love a commitment from this city to say that lab is worth preserving. Maybe it can be moved. Maybe it's siting is a little bit inconvenient. It can be moved, it can be saved on site, but it definitely needs some attention. So I don't know if there's any response.
I mean, honestly, I can at least let you know, I appreciate the comments because, trust me, there's been a lot of discussion about what you just mentioned. And I would think that that would be something that the city has to address and speak to. But I don't want you to think that those comments and those concerns were not raised as we have gone through this process because it's
We
very.
talked about it, at least we stopped on the tour today.
Cool. Yes.
Glad to hear it.
So we did talk about it.
And just so everybody understands, this panel, we are like you all, we are essentially the public. So we have beat them across the head with some of the very same concerns that you guys just raised. So it's not dismissed. We're trying to compile this information, compact this information, and disseminate it as best we can. And there will be just points in communicating it, but not all of it is missed. And it's always important for comments like that to be iterated, so it is captured.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one of the things just to remember, as I said, is that when we started out this process, is that this panel, we kind of are the citizen or the expert with skill set. Nobody, as you heard, nobody's technically working specifically on this project. We had them convene just so that Perkins and Will could get the feedback and additional comments, some which you have been already made, so that they can have the best plan when it's finished. So none of these folks have been involved, so I want to make sure it's very clear. So if something's missing or whatever, they're not responsible for that. But the information and the comments that we've heard today are crucial, and it's really nice to hear that some of them are reinforcing some of the things that were said earlier, so we'll continue to say as we move forward with this project. So thank you so much. And Alderman Shabazz, you will close off.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Stella Shabazz, and I sit on City Council. And I want to also again publicly thank the community for allowing me to go back to City Council starting in 2020. With that being said, I need to, and I'll be a part of the team that is going to move this project forward at least in the next 4 years and hopefully beyond that time. I'm hearing some real concerns in this room on today. And we need to, and sir, what is your name again? David. And I see that you are a part of, and I've heard you say, that you are with Perkins and Will. And some of these people work for you. So therefore, with the council has hired Perkins and Will to be a part of the lead team in moving the design and the professional services forward, I am holding and publicly holding, and I'm just getting started, y'all, holding you all accountable for what we are hearing in this room on today, and not just what we're hearing in this room on today, for you all to go back, and if you have not done so, because there's been work in the community, in the Carver Village community, in the Cloverdale community, in the West Savannah community, that has been being done for almost 25 years. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel and waste our taxpayers' money on doing things over and over again. We're talking about some design. I heard a passionate question in reference to the parking lot. And our former city manager is very, very clear and precise about the parking situation in our city. But when it comes to the design and as we move forward, Perkins and Wills and everybody else is involved, we have got to bring forward. This information is very, very good, but we've got to bring some relative information before the people so that they can see the real story. You're absolutely right, Mr. Perkins and Will, about what you're saying. We just need to see it.
Yeah, I agree.
We need to see it.
Absolutely.
And also, in reference to the infrastructure, as a civil engineer myself, we can put down the architectural work that you architects do, but when the real thing, the real event that must take place first is putting that infrastructure down. Now, I represent the 5th District, and I am upstream. I am down below what you're showing down here. Now, I have had very, very deep conversations in the past 4 years in reference to what I'm seeing here. Now, I've been, and you all know me, I've been on the opposing side to a whole lot of things because I hear what the people say and what the people are thinking and what the people say that they need. Infrastructure and flooding, sewerage, drainage is a serious situation in this area. There's going to be serious impact to the communities at Carver Village, Cloverdale, even down in my district. So as we are moving forward with this, professionals, we need to keep in mind what we're doing here and not to paint a picture of falseness and give a facade of what is not real. I am being real and serious. We are taking millions and millions of taxpayers' dollars to get this wonderful thing, and it's going to be a wonderful thing once it's finished. But we've got to be honest. And we also need to have more diversity. Now, y'all know my story. I don't hide it under a bushel. We've got to have more diversity on this team so that we can go to the deepness and the rootness of this whole situation. So when it's all done, people can come to our community and see the awesome history and herstory that has taken place in our community. So I am charging you. Now, I have not been vocal too much about this situation because I saw it not being in my district. But you all did a thing last night that has changed my whole situation. So you'll be hearing more from me about this as I stand and speak for the people. So thank y'all so much.
Okay. Perspectives from other professionals. So I thank the city for making that investment to add another meeting. I've been very vigilant about it because I do think it's important. This is probably one of the largest investments that the city will make for public projects in the next probably 20 years or so. So it's important that we get it right. So I thank you all for coming out. If you've got additional questions or concerns, there's a table out front that you can jot down your questions, and the development team will take it and go through it. We're going to also meet tomorrow, as I said, at 10 o'clock in case there's additional conversations and questions that you might have regarding the planning process. So thank you again. Thank you to the panelists. Let's give them a hand.